when we get there, I mean, here I am again, I'm so green. I don't know the signs, that physical signs or emotional, the things that you feel as an investigator when you're starting to have these experiences. I'm like, we weren't even there, I don't think, 5 minutes. And I looked up and I see somebody walk across this room, and we were supposed to be 3 of us in the house by ourselves. And I'm like, I just saw somebody. Did I really just see somebody walk over there? And so other little things were happening. There was noises, ending up the door opening it by itself on command. We had a light bulb blow, just a lot of experiences that I'm like, is this really happening? And am I prepared for this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm prepared for this. But what am I going to do? I mean, I'm here. We're in the middle of it. Got to dig my heels in, and I'm going to stand my ground.
What compels us to seek out the dead? Depending who you ask, the answer to that question will vary, but we're all curious about what happens after physical death. By observing and communicating with what we believe to be the former living, it's a confirmation that there is an afterlife. We may never understand the nature of why some spirits are residual loops, replaying themselves while others are intelligent and interact with us. We don't know why some die and move on peacefully, yet others remain, oblivious or refusing to accept that they're even dead. We have our theories, but they're far from proven. One thing I believe we can be certain of, however, is that there is another facet to our reality. I don't know that it's possible to fully comprehend it until we ourselves move into that other side, but there's no good reason why we shouldn't try to learn more about it. There was a time in the not too distant past that I viewed most paranormal investigators in much the same way. I had my own preconceived notions about their motives, their methods, and most of all, their results. It wasn't until I had Casey Goodwin from Oregon Paranormal on back in season 2 where I realized I was wrong to think that way. Of course, there's always going to be people in it just for the recognition, but I don't think that it's fair to paint them all with the same brush. We can't just watch an episode of Ghost Hunters and say, oh, okay, so that's how it works then. After it's all edited down for maximum effect, we're only left with a small fraction of what actually goes into an investigation. A quick bio of someone in between shaky night vision camera sequences doesn't help you understand who a person is or why they're investigating the paranormal. Besides, who says ghosts can't share the spotlight? Yeah, I mean, we all want to know what it is they're chasing after, but I also want to know why they're doing it. Where does that passion come from, and how has the paranormal affected them? What led them down this particular path, and what have they learned about themselves in the process? One thing I can tell you after almost 2 years producing this show, the reward is not fame or fortune. 99.9% of us who dedicate significant time toward unexplained phenomena have day jobs. That's because you don't really make money doing it. You spend money, but you don't make it, and there's barely a fraction of exceptions. The payoff is enjoying the stories, learning, and sharing that knowledge with other people. It's about the wonder and trying to better understand the phenomenon in the hopes that maybe you can better understand your own existence. I knew before I ever recorded the first episode that this podcast would never make me rich or famous. That's not the point, and it's a ridiculous expectation. I do it because it feeds my curiosity. It helps me grow as a person. I do it because I like to entertain and create. Besides, I'm not much for small talk. I don't get into politics, religion, or economics. I'm not into typical guy stuff like hunting, fishing, MMA, and 4x4s. No offense if that's your thing. Some of us are just square pegs in a world full of round holes. And if you're anything like me, you know it's not that easy to relate to the general public. All you can do is seek like-minded people and hope that you find a few. My point is, though, what I've been saying all along is it all comes back to you and me. It's about us. By putting a microscope on the unexplained, we magnify ourself. And that is what today's episode is all about. Jerry Beavers is the president and co-owner of Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. I am sure that she has a few stories to tell, and I'm looking forward to learning more about her team, but most of all, I'm excited to get to know her a little bit and get a better understanding of what drives her to investigate the paranormal. Because no matter how many stories you have to tell, we each have our own story. And more often than not, those are usually the best ones. Now, before we break here, I just wanted to say real quickly that the download numbers for the Ether have never been higher. Over the last couple of months, they've more than doubled, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. I've been working really hard to reach more people and expand our audience, so I'm truly humbled to see that it's working. You guys are amazing. There is a second very crucial component to all of this, though. The Ether needs your support. You can do that by subscribing, rating, and reviewing us on the Apple Podcasts app. It helps to follow us on Spotify and social media, YouTube, and all that, but there's no bigger podcasting platform than Apple. Therefore, listenership there and ratings go a long way, and we need your help to make us more visible on this massive platform. It literally takes 2 minutes tops. Just give it a few stars, leave a few words, and that's all. You don't have to write a novel or even a paragraph. Just a brief summary of what you think is all it takes to push the Ether up to that next level where it belongs, and I know we can get there. So if you haven't yet, please take that 1 or 2 minutes out of your day to show your appreciation for our guests and all the hard work that goes into the show. Like I said, the numbers are really starting to climb here, and this is quickly becoming a landmark year for the Ether. I just need that extra little push from you guys in order for it to break through and catch fire. Okay, we're almost there. Thanks for hearing me out, and an extra special thank you to those of you who've already done your part. It really does mean everything. I will be right back with Jerry Beavers after this.
So my kids were grown, had empty nest syndrome, and a friend of a friend told me that there was an opening on a paranormal team. And so I contacted Kale, had an interview. He fibbed to me and told me that all we do is sit in the dark and talk to ourselves. Nothing ever really happens. And it's been history since then.
Now, is it strictly Oklahoma, or do the investigations ever take you out of state as well?
We do more in Oklahoma because most of us are working adults.
Hmm.
We do venture out of state once in a while. I'm kind of partial to Texas myself.
Oh, okay.
I have friends and family there, and so I'm like, reason to go to Texas and investigate something I don't normally get to do.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a big place. No shortage of weird things happening there.
Yeah, and Texas being like, I'm going to stay with 500 miles, and you're still in Texas. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. I was in Texas for a little while, and when I left, I drove through the Panhandle, and man, it was never ending. I was starting to wonder if I'd ever make it out of Texas, but shifting gears here a little bit, I'm curious, when did you first become aware that you had some unique abilities that other people don't typically have?
I think I kind of always knew, but since you don't know what anybody else feels or sees or hears on a daily basis, you just assume that other people see these things or hear these things all the time.
Hmm.
And whenever I joined the team, you know, like it's not going to be like it's on the TV show, right? And then my second experience was like, oh my gosh, this is like a TV show. This isn't real. How y'all are playing a joke on me, right? Um, and then I found a group that of like-minded individuals that believe that they also have abilities outside of our normal five senses that I would consider everybody has those, and I think everybody else has metaphysical abilities as well. Sometimes we just tend to ignore or just assume that that's what everybody, like I said, everybody has.
Hmm.
So, with investigations, I think that has really brought out my abilities. I know the things that I had second guessed when I joined the team. I know now that is indeed not everybody sees and hears and feels what I feel on a daily basis. Um, Even just sitting in my own home, there's that old joke, Dad, can we go to a haunted house? And the dad says, what's wrong with the one that we have? So, that's kind of what we have, but it's a relative. It's my mother, so she hangs out in our house quite a bit. So,
Huh, interesting.
yeah.
Now, in the beginning, when you first started to investigate for PIO, was it what you expected it to be? And do you think you were prepared enough for it?
Well, it wasn't really, I didn't really have any kind of expectations other than what I've had seen on TV. And we
Hmm.
all know TV is exaggerated no matter what you're
Yeah.
watching.
Yep.
Um, I wasn't prepared. And it wasn't Kel's fault by any means because I was green. Um, he would never have invited me to an investigation knowing that there was going to be things happening that I wasn't prepared for. But with that happening quickly in my career as an investigator, that helped mold me and made me the kind of investigator that I am today. And it made me want to be able to help those who are experiencing things on a day-to-day basis that they may not be able to explain,
Hmm.
or that's making them uncomfortable in their home or business.
Right. Well, speaking of that experience, your second investigation there, where you saw the apparition, the door open on its own, the light bulb went out. I know that was a pretty big eye opener for you. So, in what ways did that change how you approach the paranormal?
I I knew then it wasn't anything to play with. You can go and have a good time, but then you don't know if you're doing an investigation in a place you've never been before and it's not a known place where like little kids are playing. You have those places where you have the little fun interactions with the entities, that kind of thing. But when you're walking into an unknown, you have to be prepared for something that you may not really want to be prepared for, but better safe than sorry.
Hmm.
So, again, there are a lot of great, amazing, fun investigations, but playing with things, I keep telling people this, please don't go out and just start asking things. Find somebody that's going to help guide you to do things not like some teams on TV do. You don't want to go into somebody's house living and start bossing and yelling at them, because and that's the same way I would approach the deceased. So there were people too.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that's a good point. And on that note, I know that you put a big emphasis on protecting yourself while you're out there investigating. So, in what ways do you do that?
we do prayers. We put up our shields. Everybody has a shield. You can put your shield up. I use crystals and oils, um, and just just our faith that I am strong enough to defeat anything that may try to attack me.
Has that ever not worked before? Have you ever been negatively affected by one of these entities?
Yes, that second investigation. Again, I was very green. I didn't know what to expect, and I thought maybe I was nervous, or maybe I ate too much or had something that I shouldn't have had, and I was feeling kind of nauseous. And I'm like, man, I just don't feel right. I don't, I don't, I don't know if it's what I ate or what. But once I started taking note after the investigation was over, okay, so now there was something negative here. These are the signs. These physically, this is what I was feeling. Emotionally, these are things that I was feeling. Mentally, I'm hearing, okay, I'm taking note of the things that may be body language from the other investigators. I became very aware of my surroundings, whereas before I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm hanging out, having a good time. But then when I started feeling that way and other things started happening, and we kind of realized it was something negative, and I'm like, oh, pay attention, make note, do all these things. And that way I know if I run across this again.
Yeah. You mentioned TV earlier, and there's a lot of misconceptions about paranormal investigation. I think much of that is because the only frame of reference so many people have is edited down for TV or YouTube. And obviously, that is not the whole story.
Right.
So, how would you compare that sort of pop paranormal world to what you guys actually do? Do you think it's a fair representation of what really happens?
It really, depending. I mean, you have to take in consideration that that 30 or 45-minute TV show is a week or 2 weeks worth of investigations crammed in, and they've got, you think things happen, pop, 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 pop. Sometimes it does, but 99% of the time, you really are sitting there in the dark talking to yourself. Um, you think you don't get anything, and you go back and listen to all the recordings. You're like, man, we got a lot of EVPs. That was really active. That was fun. So you think about, "Yeah, I'm not getting anything. Let's wrap it up." And then, something little happens and it sucks you in. So
Yeah,
there, it kind of is. It's kind of like a bait and switch when it
sure.
comes to TV versus real life. But I don't think I would trade anything in the world for it, honestly.
Yeah. I know you use quite a few different tools while you're out there to try to confirm and identify what you're dealing with. What have you found to be the most effective in terms of tech?
Tech. My new favorite toy is the SLS. We just got an SLS.
And what is that?
It's what's SLS stand for? But it's a camera. They take the Connects and they hook it up to like a tablet, and it uses the tablet. Any anomalies, well, like if you're standing there, you've got your stick figure, right?
Hmm.
So it will pick up anomaly if you have an entity that may be standing or laying or sitting or something. It picks those up because you can't see that with your eye.
Hmm.
The Connects can see that, so it's kind of cool. I We are going to try it out tonight. We have an investigation tonight, so we're going to try it out at a location we've used before or been at it before. But people think that you have to spend a whole lot of money to do an investigation. You really don't. I mean, you really just have to have yourself. I recommend a flashlight. Everybody needs a flashlight and a recorder. That's basically all you need to get started.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty amazing what a few simple devices can pick up that our eyes or ears cannot.
Right.
Speaking of tech, one of the items I've always been a little weary about was the ghost box until I saw the Hellier documentary not too long ago. Have you seen that, by the way?
I have not. It's in my queue to watch.
You've got to check that out.
I'm going to watch that. But people say, well, those are pre-recorded words and blah, 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 blah. And so on our last investigation, we went to Cowtown and we did a paid event. I wanted my girls, some of our new team members, to experience a paid event.
Hmm.
And it called me by my first and last name. So for someone to say that was recorded in there, I can tell you Jeremy Jones did not put Jerry Beavers in in his a recording of, and that stuff.
Right.
So, and I'm like, what did I do now? Is that my mom? So it's, but again, everybody's going to, you might have your skeptics and they're going to say, well, it was somebody on, you can do all these things to make those things come across. You could, But again, I'm not smart enough to know how to do that. So
Gotcha. I assume your abilities give you a little bit of an edge when communicating with the spirit world, if you will. Do you think you'd still be investigating the paranormal if you didn't have those?
I think I would, because going in, I didn't think, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. So I wasn't 100% sold that I had any kind of ability that anybody else didn't have. So I think I would still, because of the technology that we do have. Again, it's not proof. It's just this is my experience, and this EVP, I think it says X, and somebody like, yeah, that's just radio pickup.
Right.
Those are things that I can't force you to believe is true. These are all just experiences. It's not proof by any means, because we can't prove anything.
Yeah.
We can't prove that there's an entity sitting next to you. We can't prove this. We can't prove that. But when you have multiple mediums, we have several mediums on our team, and when we've learned when I am investigating and I'm getting, whether it's in my third eye or I'm seeing or feeling things, I get discombobulated. And so I lose my words. So one of our newer team members, Andrea, she is an amazing psychic and medium and all the goodness. And I'll look at her and she'll look at me, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing hand signals like the girl's got a bun and she's like, yeah, I see that too. So we bounce things off of each other. Is this what you're getting? And so that's me. This entity is wanting to communicate with whoever is willing to listen.
hmm Yeah, that's an interesting aspect to all this, I think. The fact that these investigations have not only helped you confirm your abilities, but further hone them as well.
Right.
I think that's pretty cool. You mentioned your group there, so this might be a good opportunity to introduce everybody.
Okay.
Who's all part of the team and what roles do they play?
Kel is the founder and owner. And then there's myself. I'm president co-owner, Mistake. We have Andrea. She is a psychometrist. Do you know what that is? Some people don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's somebody who basically works with objects. They
Right.
pick up on their history, yeah, things like that.
Yes, and she even travels. She is also our case manager. She's one of our newer members of our team. We have a phenomenal team that has just came together. Then there is Jason. He is a light worker. He's new to the team as well. Tammy is a light worker, medium. She has amazing abilities. Let's see. There is Willow. Willow is our audio tech, and she has hearing of a bat. She can hear a Class C audio like nobody's business. So something I would totally miss. She's like, "Hey, did you hear this?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't hear that. So let's listen to that again." And then there's Harlan. He's our head clergy. So
Okay.
Willow and Harlan have been on the team a little bit longer than myself. They were there when I came on. And the other three, Andrea, Jason, and Tammy, are pretty new within this last 6 months, but their abilities are spot on. They're naturals. And I am so glad that they were led to come to us.
Right on. Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty diverse team there.
We do.
Yeah. Aside from your second investigation, I know that one was pretty poignant for you, but can you tell us about another significant case that either really surprised you or just stands out among the others you've been a part of?
Well, I stayed in a haunted hotel by myself, the Net Hotel in Granbury, Texas.
Okay.
I was the only person, the hotel owner was downstairs, like in the far corner. She didn't come upstairs, so I was the only paid person in the hotel. And so I stayed up pretty late the first night. I didn't get anything that I could really share with people, but I heard noises. I heard walking, knocking, the normal stuff. We tried to debunk a lot of things. So it was probably about 4 o'clock when I decided to call it a night. And a thunderstorm came through. And all night long before I went to bed, I had seen and felt small children playing in the little foyer at the top of the stairs. And so I'd sit in my room. I left my door open because you could see right through to the foyer. And so I'd sit there and I could see them and hear them giggling and they were playing chase. It was kind of cool. I wish I would have had an SLS back then. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, okay, I've got to get some rest. I've got some adventuring to do tomorrow. And so I turn off the lights, I get in bed, and I hear this. It's probably about 5:30 or 6, and this big thunderclap comes, and it was loud enough to wake me up. And so, being a mom in the twilight, I felt somebody crawl into bed with me. And again, being in twilight, you reach over, kiddo, it's okay. And then I'm like, wait, I'm not at home. My kids are grown, and I'm by myself.
Hmm.
Okay, kiddo, it's fine. So that was pretty. Um, that was pretty eventful for me. For a small child to trust me to crawl into bed with me because I think they were scared from the thunder.
Yeah.
That was pretty amazing for me. So
For sure, yeah. It sounds like you really take these things in stride. So I really commend you for that. I know you don't scare very easy, but
I don't.
is there a particular scenario, though, that would ever make you decide against entering a particular space?
If I was with a group that sometimes you can just feel that something doesn't want you there.
Hmm.
Whether it is not everything that is negative is demonic. Demonics are a little more rare than what people think. If you're cranky in life, you're gonna be cranky in death. So if I'm just kind of wandering around and I find an abandoned house and I feel like I go to walk in, I feel like you're not supposed to be here. I don't want you here. I'm gonna respect that as they were living. Maybe they don't realize that they're deceased and they think I'm invading their home. So I
Hmm.
probably would go, oh, I'm just gonna look from the outside, not gonna go in. But if I had somebody who was not prepared as an investigator, period, should say prepared, period, and I was to walk across something negative, I would go, let's just not go here.
Yeah, it's a good answer.
Yeah.
I know you have an investigation actually coming up later today,
Yes.
and that's at the Pioneer Museum. What can you tell us about that place?
It has a lot of artifacts. I hope that Andrea has a great time there. We've had walking noise, like tapping, disembodied voices, shadows, nothing malevolent at all. It's just, I think because of so many artifacts, that there are some attachments to those artifacts. And the town is quite old. It's Chandler, Oklahoma, and that's like long Route 66. So there was a lot of travel things that went through. It used to be, I want to think it used to be a pharmacy, is what it used to be, and like a hardware store. So there's all of that traffic that you get in there. That might have a residual. I think that one has the residual that goes back and forth from the front door to like an area that may have been a cash register or something to that effect. But it's a fun little place. There's always some sort of activity, and it's a great place to get your feet wet. It's a safe little place, and the curator loves to have us. Brenda is amazing. She's like, "Yeah, come on, let's go." And she comes and sometimes hangs out with us because she's there all the time, and they interact with, you're there all the time. They're going to interact with you more. So, and she loves it. She loves it.
What is the longest amount of time you've ever spent investigating a place?
Let's see. I was in the Crazy Water Hotel by myself for about 5 hours.
Okay.
I was looking in. They're remodeling, and literally they invited me in. So it's middle of the day, and it's a 7-story building with a basement. And so I'm like, I just want to look in. I've heard that there are amazing stories that go on here. And I kind of like to go in blind. So I didn't do a whole lot of research before, but I knew that this building had activity. And so I went in and I'm like, I don't want to get you guys in trouble. Like, yeah, no, you're fine. You're here to take pictures, right? I'm like, yeah, yeah. So I go in and he goes, just make sure you're careful. And so I wasn't prepared to do an investigation. So I just did like a daytime walkthrough investigation kind of thing, like you would do to prepare for an investigation.
Hmm.
So I go downstairs and I didn't have a flashlight with me because, again, I wasn't really going to do an investigation. And I only had the flashlight on my camera. So there's a lesson right there. Always have a flashlight on you. Um, I kind of got lost down in the basement a little bit because there wasn't a whole lot of electricity, and it's kind of a giant maze. There used to be baths down there, and they have taken out some of the walls, so there's not really a clear cut path. And I'm like, okay. I'll find some sunlight here somewhere. So about 10 minutes, I was wandering around. Okay, this is a really big place. And so I had started at the bottom and worked my way. No, let me take that back. I started in the basement and then I went up to the 7th floor and worked my way down. So, and I was on the 4th floor and I was texting one of my friends and I saw the shadow out of the corner of my eye just like walk by me. And I sent a message. I'm like, something just walked by me. So I took a note where I was standing in the building, and this is like probably like 11 o'clock in the morning. Well, maybe about that time. I'd been there a couple hours, so probably like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was middle of the day, and so I'm like, okay. Took notes, took pictures, made sure there was nobody else on the floor. There were no workers on the floor at that time. And so I make it down to the next floor, and I ran across some workers, and they were talking to me about they had said that there was an investigator in the building and they asked if it was me. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So they were telling me a little bit about things. And they go like, you need to go over and talk to, I can't remember what his name is, Joe Bob across the way. And so I'm like, okay. So I go over and talk to him. And I said, so they tell me you want to talk to me about an experience. And they're like, well, I was up there on the floor above. And I'm like, uh-huh. And I'm by myself and I'm wheeling some stuff down and this guy walks by me. And I go, excuse me, you're supposed to be up here. And I turn around and the guy is gone. I'm like, oh, okay. So can you tell me? It's like, so he tells me where it's at and exactly where I was at. So I'm like, okay, someone corroborated my experience in the middle of the day. It's not just me. That makes me happy.
Right. Yeah. Confirmation.
Yes.
If there was one place in the world you could go investigate, where would you choose to go and why?
Let's see. There's so many. Okay, we're going to stay with the continental U.S. I have been drawn to go to the Shanley Hotel in New York. I don't know why. A lot of people don't even know anything about it. And it's just an old hotel that's been there a long time, and they remodeled it most recently, and the activity has been crazy. And I'm just like, I want to go and stay there by myself. I just want to go and see, I'll stay up all night, have all the recorders going, all the cameras, and just see. I, but for whatever reason, I don't even know how I came across it. And that's been a calling for me for quite a while.
Well, you talk about going to these places by yourself, and it sounds like a lot of the experiences you've had have happened when you were alone. Do you think that it's easier, or I don't know, these beings prefer to interact with us when we're isolated as opposed to a room full of people?
In some instances, I do have a lot of experiences by myself, but again, those are things that are personal experiences. I can't say, hey, I can prove that this happened to me.
Yeah.
That's personal for me. But I have had shared experiences, again, at Cowtown, my name being called in front of a room full of people, first and last name. I'm like, okay, y'all heard that, right? I'm not the only one. They're like, yeah, I called you by your first and last name. And but there are some locations, like theaters and that sort, the more people you have, it seems to be the more activity you get from certain entities, because maybe they're an actor or they were a speaker, something like that. And they like working with you can't see my hand movements here.
That makes sense though. Yeah.
So, but they want an audience. And so when you've got people there and they're like, yeah, these are my people, they want a show, so I'm going to give them one. So I think it just depends. Good point. I think it just depends on the spirit, and if they are shy. There are some spirits that are very intelligent. Maybe a small child might be drawn to a certain kind of person. Mm-hmm. I do get children quite a bit. I don't know if they see me as a child, because I get a lot like poking and, shirt pulling and things like that, things that kids would do to other kids. Maybe my persona to them is a small child. I don't know, but I do get a lot of that. And I get a lot of people that are lost.
Okay. Well, speaking of that, what's your process when you sense that somebody needs your help? What do you do to help them move on?
So to help them move on, sometimes it's something as simple as, do you realize that you're deceased? And they may go, no. That's a great tool that's a great time to use a spirit box or an EVP session. And sometimes, like, do I really want to tell them they're deceased? Because sometimes you can feel that it's residual and it's just going back and forth, and sometimes it's just it's an intelligent haunt.
Yeah.
So maybe it's someone who's newly deceased and didn't realize.
Hmm. Well, is there one that's more common than the other, like residuals versus intelligent haunts in your experience?
I think for me, it's been about 50-50.
Oh, okay.
So it's not, I think it just depends what you're looking for and what you're paying attention to.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's why a lot of us like to do things in the dark, because we're depriving some senses. And when
Yeah.
you deprive one sense, then your other senses kind of pick up on that.
Yeah, definitely. In the grand scheme of things, what would you ultimately like to accomplish with your work? Like, what are the big questions you hope to answer for yourself?
For myself,
Hmm.
I'm not sure if there's an answer. I think it's more helping those who need help, whether it's the living who need explanation of what they may be experiencing, whether it's a haunting or someone who may be coming into their abilities,
Hmm.
or a deceased who needs help crossing over or wants to give a message to someone who's living. So I think it's more of a service type of thing for me.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like a helper slash educator kind of role.
Yes,
Yeah, I like
yes.
that. I know we touched on this briefly before, but what advice would you have in general for anyone who's considering or who's new to paranormal investigation? Like, what should they know based on what you've encountered out there?
Okay, everybody seems to think that the number one rule for paranormal investigations is to have equipment. It's not, it's snacks. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
it's snacks. You gotta have your snacks. Okay. But seriously, be open minded, be respectful, because again, you wouldn't want somebody to come into your space yelling and screaming and demanding you do something. Don't do that. Even if it's something that you might think is bad, maybe it's just somebody who's cranky. Be respectful to find out why they're there, what they're doing, those kind of things. So, and then find somebody who is known in the field to maybe give you some guidance. Ask if they can do a ride along, because every team has a different style.
Hmm.
If you're looking to join a team, maybe my team is not for you. We do try to debunk first, and we don't take everything as, oh, that's paranormal. Okay, I heard that noise. Oh, was that rattling of the air conditioner or the pipes, or was there a car going by? Okay, debunked.
Yeah.
This is, we looked at everything. We can't figure out why there's this noise or what it relates to. So maybe we need to look at that as far as maybe history of the building or whatever
Hmm.
the case may be.
Yeah, I really love that you brought up being skeptical because I think that's maybe the most important thing you can bring with you is that healthy dose of skepticism because
Yes.
you can't just go into a place all in believer guns blazing, that your results are going to be pretty biased and not very credible. So, yeah, good call. Other than the Pioneer Museum, do you have any other events or investigations coming up you want to tell people about?
Let's see. We have a couple of private events for some women's groups in. It's not set in stone, but we do have an event coming in March. I'll keep everybody up to date when we get all the details ironed out about that. I'm so excited about hosting a larger event. Um, and just if what I want to tell everybody is if you are having activity and you don't know what to do, feel free to call us, send us an email, find us on Facebook, and we can help. Maybe if we're even not in your area, we can talk to you about how to find somebody in your area or to what you need to do to find some relief for what you are experiencing.
Okay. And where is the best place people can go and get in touch with you, or if they just want to see what you're up to?
Okay, on Facebook, you can find us on Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. Or if you want to follow my personal shenanigans, which are quite entertaining sometimes, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Jerry B. Paranormal Investigator.
Perfect. Well, I can't thank you enough, Jerry. This was awesome to have you on and get to know you a little bit. Love to have you back on the program here in the future and see what you're up to.
Oh, I would love to be back on. You never know what my antics are going to bring.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll make that happen. Please keep in touch, and thank you once again. I really appreciate it.
I will. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Take care, Jerry.
You too. Bye-bye.
Big shout out to Jerry Beavers and Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. Really appreciate you reaching out and making time for the show today. I always like to meet new people that are into the unexplained because though we all share things in common, everyone has their own unique reasons for why they're into it. And one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is grabbing that spotlight that always seems to be fixed on the phenomenon and turning it on the people who are either experiencing it, researching, or investigating these things. Getting a description of an orb, apparition, cold spot, or some kind of presence isn't a bad thing, but it is a bit of a novelty that eventually wears off after you've heard enough reports. We do have a lot of data, but how much closer are we to understanding these reports because of that data? The same exact thing can be said for UFOs. We have a century's worth of descriptions and locations, but we still don't know what's really behind them. Instead, I think we should focus on the history of a location. We should put the microscope on the person who actually reported the phenomenon. Look at it this way: if you see something you can't explain and it's affected you in some profound way, what aspect would you feel is most important? The size, color, or direction the thing went, or how your worldview was completely altered forever? You can tell a million people what the thing looked like, but so what? Is that really the big takeaway here? For every description, there's 1,000 more just like it. There are countless books and websites filled with them. Yeah, I mean, that's great, but it's only a tiny layer on the surface. Like any iceberg, the vast majority of it lies below the surface. And if you want to get to the bottom of it, it's going to take quite a bit more effort than a superficial glance in order to do so. The same goes for all of life's mysteries. We used to think Venus was just another star in the night sky. And that's because the naked eye can only take in so much information. It's up to us to discern what it's actually seeing. Using our guest Jerry as an example, she doesn't dedicate as much free time as she does, just so she can say, I was there, I saw it, look at me. She educates and helps people come to terms with the paranormal. People like Jerry help those who've passed away realize their situation and move on to a better place. I can't confirm that, mind you. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm not a medium. I don't try to communicate with the dead. I don't even know that these beings are what we think they are, but lots of people, much smarter than me with more experience, have come to that conclusion. Mediums and shamans communicate with the spirit world all the time. They're consistently given information that only that particular person, now deceased, would know. So if you have a better theory that explains it all, I would love to hear it. My point is, though, there's so much more to these stories. Each one has a history, each one has one or more observers, and every experiencer has their own story to tell. In order to wrap our minds around these phenomena, we have to analyze all the above. Nothing is off limits when it comes to the unexplained. The more angles we look at, the better off we'll be for it in the end. That's where I'm going to conclude Season 3, Episode 7, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts, okay? There's no better time than right now to show your support. We could really use it. We're on all the major platforms, including Spotify and YouTube. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, make sure to visit the official website, that is theether.org. If you have questions, comments, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, just email info@theether.org. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time in the Ether.